Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 49, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. I am on the board of our local community organization, and we had a big fundraising pie social this past weekend, and I was in charge of that event, so my time was taken up with that on Saturday. On Friday, I did get to escape a little bit, and I went to the Bernina Serger event that our store hosted, the quilt store where I teach in town. Sometimes either I or one of the store employees will teach the Serger event, but this time the store brought in Kathy Shalda, who is one of the Bernina educators from Texas, and she flew up to Kalispell and spent the weekend teaching the new Bernina Stitchwise Serger event class. We had one session on Friday and one session on Saturday. I couldn't attend the Saturday session, but I went on Friday to be an extra set of hands for Kathy because I'm a teacher and I know what it's like to be teaching a class when you're trying to teach and run around and troubleshoot machines and do all that other stuff in addition to teaching. So I offered to come and be an extra set of hands to work in the background, so I made sure that the irons stayed hot. I troubleshot machine issues and basically just did what I could to help keep the class going smoothly. And I found out at the beginning of the class that our store was the very first store in the country to host this year's Serger event. The Serger event project changes every year, and we were the first store to have the class. So that was kind of exciting. Kathy's a wonderful teacher. I learned a lot. I always learn a lot, even though I teach a lot of these classes myself. There's always something new to learn. I would have loved to have been there on Saturday, but I had to help out and run the pie social. So that's what I did. And yesterday I came home, and my other big exciting news for this weekend was that I got the replacement part for my Necky BV industrial sewing machine. I bought this sewing machine, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, off of eBay. It was in Salt Lake City. It had come out of a department store in Salt Lake City, and I have a friend, Tara, who travels back and forth to Salt Lake a lot because her daughter lives there. And on one of the trips, she retrieved the machine for me and brought it home. When I got it, it was an electric machine. It had a clutch motor on it, and it didn't turn very well. It needed some TLC, let's put it that way. So I took the machine out of the table that it came in and cleaned it up, oiled it thoroughly, got it working again, and I popped it into a Singer industrial treadle table. It just so happens that a lot of the other brands are the same footprint as Singer machines, and so they're interchangeable in the treadle tables. So I put it into an industrial treadle table and started using it to make bags. It's the perfect machine because it's what I would consider a light industrial. It doesn't do leather, but it's kind of right between my domestic machine and my heavy-duty Juki industrial. So there are times when using the Juki industrial is like killing flies with a sledgehammer, and times when the domestic machine isn't quite powerful enough to do what I need it to do. So I use the Necky BV. It's great for sewing waxed canvas and things like that. Unfortunately, about 6 months ago, I broke part of the tension assembly. That machine has always had tension issues, and looking back now, I think that the tension assembly was probably getting worn out, and I tried to adjust it and broke the tension stud, which was the main centerpiece of the tension assembly. And because that machine is Italian, and because there aren't very many of them still left in the world, and because Necky is no longer making that part, I was all of a sudden in a world of hurt because I had no way to get a replacement part. I asked around here and tried to get a local machine shop to make me a new part, but they weren't interested. They didn't think that they could do it. So I got on the internet and I found a machine shop in Spokane. So last month, when I was on my way to Alaska, I stopped in at the machine shop. I had sent pictures of the part and asked if they thought that they could make a replacement for it. And the guy that I talked to said he thought he could. So I stopped in on my way to Seattle and dropped the part off. And he gave me an estimate. I told him to go ahead and make the replacement part for me. And when I got home from the pie social on Saturday, the package was sitting on the table waiting for me. It had come in Saturday's mail. So yesterday morning before church, I put the tension assembly back together and put it into the machine and threaded the machine up and just did a little quick test sew, and the machine sewed. I needed to do some fine tuning, but I had to get on my way to church. So when I came home from church, I decided to give the machine a spa day. I made a new treadle belt for it. I thoroughly dusted and cleaned it off. I oiled it as well as I could, and I put a brand new needle in it, and then I threaded it up again and played around with the tension. The tension assemblies on these old vintage machines don't have any numbers, so you have to kind of fiddle with them until you get a feel for where the tension needs to be set. So I found the sweet spot, and I did a little bit of test sewing, and the machine is sewing beautifully. It's almost sewing better than it did before the tension assembly broke, which is part of what makes me think that maybe that old tension stud was just wearing out. So I'm excited to have that machine operational again. I'm excited to be able to make some bags on it. It sits here in my office and I get to look at it every day, so I'm just thrilled that it's back up and running. I mentioned in last week's episode that September is National Sewing Month. September is also Project Dress-A-Girl Month. And one of my listeners suggested that I interview the person behind Project Dress-A-Girl. So I reached out to Mari de Jesus and asked her if she would be willing to do an interview with me. And she very graciously said yes. I know this is a busy month for her, but she leaped at the opportunity. And so we scheduled an interview last week, and I'm bringing that to you today. Mari is a delightful person, and we were visiting a little bit ahead of the interview. And I always like to ask my interview guests where they are from, where they've lived, how they learned to sew. Mari currently lives in Gaithersburg, Maryland, but I asked her where she grew up, and she said that she grew up in Ohio. And I said, "Oh, where?" And she said, "A little town west of Cleveland." And I laughed to myself a little bit because a little town west of Cleveland is how I describe where I grew up. So I pressed a little bit further and discovered that she grew up in Lorain, Ohio, which is where my parents grew up. I was actually born in Elyria, Ohio, the town next door to Lorain. And I grew up in Avon, Ohio, which is only a few miles from Lorain. She went to Southview High School, and the father of one of my friends from high school actually taught at Southview High School. So now you can all hum "It's a Small World After All" to yourself and have that song stuck in your head for the rest of the day. Mari is the owner of Inspired Leather, and I think that you will enjoy our conversation and hearing about how Project Dress-A-Girl got started. So let's get to it. Welcome, Mari, to the podcast, and I'm excited to talk about Project Dress-A-Girl. So before we get started on that, I'd love if you would tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. You and I found out when we were chatting before the recording started that we grew up not too far from each other, right outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So that was interesting to discover. But let's hear about your life and how you learned to sew and where that's taken you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me on. Well, gosh, I've been sewing for About a decade now. It's actually been a little longer. It's been a while. But I never had an interest in it when I was growing up. My mother didn't sew, like, no, we didn't hem pants. But I did have a sewing machine. I don't know how I got it. Yeah, so I guess gosh, back in 20, it must have been around 2011. I was in between jobs and I thought, maybe I can make myself something to wear. I've got this sewing machine I've never used. So I very fearlessly and was probably a bit overconfident when I did it, but I pulled up a YouTube video and attempted to make an easy 5-minute skirt. And it was a pencil skirt. It was one measurement, your waist measurement. And I'm hippie. I've got a glorious dunk. So I just knew had to use that hip measurement, So I went with what I just knew was correct and made my skirt out of a woven fabric. It was the tightest thing I've ever made. And I still wore it out. I was so proud of it. I still wore it out. And I couldn't figure out like why it just looked so horrible, like why was it not right? And yeah, the girl who had done the video tutorial came on a week later and was like, "Hey y'all, I'm sorry that I forgot to tell you all that I used a stretchy fabric."
No.
So after that, I ended up taking a class at one of the local fabric stores over here, and it gave me the basics to where I was just like, okay, I can go. I can finally sew something that looks decent.
That's a not unimportant detail. So you didn't let that first experience dissuade you. Did you go on to make more clothing for yourself?
I did, yes. I mostly made clothing for just myself for the longest time. Refused to make anything for anyone else, because I knew my measurements. I knew how to make things fit me. And I've always been a, Tim Gunn fan of, make it work, right? And some of the garments that I love the best have been make it work moments where I had to get creative. And I don't want to have to do that with other people's stuff. So yeah, I started making all kinds of clothing, and then eventually I started a YouTube channel where I thought, hey, let me share the things that I'm making.
So you have a website, it's called Inspired Leather?
Yes. My leather journey's been pretty that's an interesting one. And I have a friend to I don't know, blame for my obsession with leather. But so when I started my YouTube channel, I got connected with a bunch of Florida sewists, and they all lived near my in-laws down in Florida. And so we became close, and then we're like, hey, let's have a sewing retreat together. So I flew down to Florida, with an empty suitcase. And my friend Heather, who was also a YouTuber at the time, said, well, I'm going to take you all to all the fabric shops around. So we went to tons and tons and tons of fabric shops. But one of the places was a Tandy Leather, and they had all of these clearance hides. So, of course, I bought a bunch of hides that I had no plans for. And brought them home with me on the airplane. And yeah, my very first project was a hand stitched leather hat, like a pork pie style hat. From there on out, it was game over. I knew, like, I love the leather game. I just love working with it. And it's funny because I like to hand sew leather, but I don't like to hand sew anything else.
Interesting. Tell me about what kind of machine are you using when you sew the leather? Or
Oh,
is it all hand sewn?
a lot of it is hand sewn, but not all of it. So I do have a couple of industrial machines that were actually very generously given to me by a friend. So I have a flatbed Juki, and I also have a cylinder machine that's really great for bags and things like that. I have a Skyver. I've got quite a lot of equipment at this point, which is helpful. It's nice to have this semi-industrial, equipment to just kind of make the process easier, the sewing process easier. You don't have to fuss with things so much. Yeah, when I was sewing on my brother machine, that thing didn't want to sew through thick seams of fleece. There's no way it was doing leather.
I totally get it. I have a Juki Industrial too, and it is a pleasure to sew heavy materials on it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about Project Dress a Girl. What was the inspiration for that?
Project Jurassic Girl came around in kind of a very interesting roundabout way. Um, so back in about, I believe it was 2020, I was looking at all of my I was looking at my huge fabric stash that I had hoarded, right? I mean, I like everyone else, I've got a lot of stuff. And I thought there's got to be a way for me to sew things and donate them like to a good cause. And so I started doing some research around different organizations that I could donate to, but unfortunately, the majority of them just want cash donations. And then I stumbled on Dress a Girl Around the World on their website. So that year, I had a couple of people come to my house, and we made, I can't remember how many dresses. It may have been like 20, 30 dresses that year that I ended up donating to the Maryland Dress a Girl Around the World ambassador. But I filmed, like, I did a little video about it on my YouTube channel because I was also around the time when I had started my YouTube channel. And, just sharing what I had. It was, you know, terrible lighting. I think I had all of the dresses like on my couch, laid over my couch at the time. It was just, you couldn't really see much of anything. But one of my subscribers who's with me from the beginning reached out and said, Mari, I really, really love that you did that. Can you bring more of this to YouTube? Can you ask other YouTubers if they can get involved or something and really spread the word? I think it's a good cause. And I didn't have to think twice about it. I really didn't. And I was like, yep, absolutely. No problem. Let's do it. And we're already in August. Um, so I reached out to a bunch of people, and everyone that I asked said, absolutely, I'm in. Count me in for a video. I was just so humbled. And then I was like, well, maybe we can get a pattern, like someone to develop a pattern for us. So I reached out to Thoughtful Creativity. I had no idea who she was. I just followed her. And I sent her an email like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you be able to maybe make a little pattern? And she said yes. And she made a dress pattern within 2 weeks. And I mean, I was floored. I couldn't believe that so many people were, jumping on board. Man, I'll tell you what, like I don't know, like 1,000 subscribers at the time. My channel it's still small, but it was minuscule then. And I remember being at that sewing retreat that I told you about with my Florida friends. We were all in the house and we were getting ready to leave the Airbnb. And Elisa's from Thoughtful Creativity,
Mhm.
her video went live and we were all watching it together. And I started crying. I mean, I want to cry just thinking about it now because it was just it was so touching and so motivating, like to see all of this work that I had put in 2 weeks, like actually get kicked off and come to fruition and have someone else spread the word about it. So I cried. All of my sewing sisters cried. We hugged each other. And from there on out, it's been an annual September long project where, we're dressing little girls living in extreme poverty.
Choosing September was kind of just how the timing worked out.
Yeah, I said, if we're going to do this, let's do it.
Well, I love that it coincides with National Sewing Month.
I agree.
I do follow Elisa's channel, Thoughtful Creativity, so she's created a pattern. Do you have other patterns that you use as well?
Oh, yeah. I make simple, like peasant dresses, with the elastic across the front and the back with little shoulder ties. Um, there are a ton of free patterns that are actually available. And I put together a video that, kind of shows everyone all of these different dresses because there's some really cute stuff out there that people can make and it's free. One of the dresses that I see all the time, they get donated all the time, petal wrap dress. And it's like a really cute reversible dress. You can slap a pocket on each side. Adorable. There's lots and lots and lots of patterns. There's even a lot of big four patterns that you could use. So I mean the options are pretty much limitless.
And you do sizes from infant to, is it 12 years old?
Yes. So from 0 to 12, um, what we found is that when these dresses are getting donated, the children tend to be smaller than your average American children. So they're more petite. So if we start to go into the 14s, the 16s, those they tend to have fewer recipients for those sizes. Yeah. So I think the sweet spot is between that 8 to 12 size range.
You started out, you said in 2020, and last year I saw that you donated about 5,000 dresses. And this year you're aiming for 7,000. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I started my channel in 2020, but
Okay.
the
Okay.
first event was 2021. So yeah, we're going on our 4th year and it's been growing exponentially. Um, the first year I remember, chatting with Elisa and I was like, man, do you think we can get 300 dresses donated? And she was like, I don't know. Let's just see where it goes. And so the goal for the first year was 100 dresses, and we collected, I think, around like 500.
Oh my goodness.
And then year two, it was, I can't even remember how much. Hang on. Yeah, year two was around like 2,500. Year three, last year, we doubled that. So we brought in 5 grand. And so this year, let's see, like I'm hoping that we can dress 7,000 little girls. Um, it feels like a lofty goal, but I think we can do it.
I have found that the sewing community is more than willing to step up and donate.
Yes, yes, without a doubt. And you should see some of the stories that I get. I get some of the most heartfelt letters and touching stories that people send me, anywhere from, hey, Madi, I was one of those girls who never had any new clothes to wear when I was little, all the way to, oh, every year. This one's like, it sucks a tear out of me, but every year someone donates a dress in the size that their child would have been. It's such a touching and moving thing to do, like this charity drive, I think has really spoken to people. It's like it's gotten into people's hearts. It has meaning, right? we're dressing children, and maybe we're dressing children because of our own personal experiences. Maybe we're missionaries, and we've seen the extreme poverty that other children go through. um, and it's all, no matter where it's coming from, it's all very meaningful. And I mean, how could you not get behind it?
Do you take donations of fabric in addition to people making the dresses, or would you just rather that the dresses be donated? Do you take cash donations? How does this how is this supported?
Yeah. So I don't take fabric donations. I've got plenty here. And then I always get, if there's a store that sponsors the event for the year, they always donate fabric. This year, House of Mami Wada is providing a lot of fabric for me to, sew all of my samples and things up with. So, fabric, I don't need, but there are people who do take donations, different sewists. One that comes to mind is Donna from Handmade by Ying. She's a quilter, but people send her fabric and she makes dresses out of their fabric. And she donates hundreds of dresses every year.
Wow.
So there are people who do take those. In terms of cash donations, I prefer not to take them. However, Dress a Girl Around the World does take cash donations for people who want to get involved but don't sew or don't have the time to sew a dress. Um, I ask them to consider just donating underwear, little girls' underwear, because those can be tucked into the pockets of the dresses. And, who doesn't need a new pair of underwear? I know I could always use some.
Exactly.
Yeah. But on my on my shop website, inspiredleatherco.com, I sell Project Dress a Girl labels for 20 cents each. And the sale of those labels actually help with the event costs. Um, there's a even the turnaround, like when I pass off the thousands of dresses that I have in my home to the, ambassadors, there's expenses associated with all of that. One year I sent boxes of dresses to hurricane victims down in Florida who lost everything, right? So those labels help with those event costs. And then anything that's left over gets donated to Hope for Women International, who runs Dress a Girl Around the World. Yeah, last year I donated about $700 to them.
Do you ever hear from any of the kids, any of the girls that get dresses, or any of the organizations?
Not typically. So I really do wish that we got more pictures, but that's something that's really hard to control.
Yeah,
Because after they leave the ambassadors and they go to the countries and stuff, if there's not a missionary there who's like taking pictures and sending them back, the dresses get distributed to, the children, and they forget to take pictures and send them back. Every now and then, I'll see pictures and I'll recognize dresses that have been donated, and I'll say, "Oh, that was Anne Marie's dress," or "Oh, that was so and so's dress." So I'll try to ping people when I see that. Um, but I think the Canadians who are participating in Project Dress a Girl actually have an advantage here, because a lot of their dresses go to Ukraine, to children, Ukrainian refugees.
hmm,
And they're amazing about getting pictures back with the little girls either holding their dresses or wearing them. They're so cute in their dresses. So if you're Canadian and you're donating to Sherry Practical Stitches, yeah, you will most likely see your dress on a child.
that's awesome. So, For people who want to participate, I know you have a lot of information on your website, and we'll put the links to that. It looks to me like you've also got something of a blog tour or a video tour going on for the month of September. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes, yes. So the event kicked off on social media. So on YouTube on September 1st, with a kickoff video and the free pattern by Thoughtful Creativity. And pretty much every day, there are other YouTube creators who are sharing pictures of their dresses, their ideas, their inspiration, tutorials. I mean, it is they're really getting into it and they're sharing some great stuff. And so there's a calendar that I put together with everyone's different YouTube channels. There's even a blogger who got involved this year, and I can't wait to see what she writes up. But yeah, it's we've got about 30 people and more people making videos, like signing on to make videos every day. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. I had Tiffany from Hoosier Handmade. She was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and I know she's very involved in Project Dress a Girl. She has a video up too, so.
Yes, she does. And she always makes such cute little dresses. I mean, she's always sewing for her daughter the cutest things. You know,
Yeah.
she's going to sew something cute for a donation.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Madi, I just learned about this event. Sorry, I didn't have time to get prepared." And I just want to let everyone know there are free patterns out there. You can sew from your stash because most of us have something that's suitable in our stash to whip one of these up. And even if you're just sewing one dress is one little girl. And that little girl matters. That makes a big difference. So if you can jump on board and sew just one dress, that is amazing. And quite honestly, if you can't, but you help spread the word to your sewing friends, that is going to be helpful as well because we've got some big goals this year. 7,000 little girls. That's a lot of girls to dress. So yeah, definitely spread the word to as many people as you know.
Wonderful. And I will make sure that we have links to all of this in the show notes so that people can get the patterns and check your calendar. And you have information on your website too, I believe, about where to send the dresses.
Yes, yes. Lots of different ambassadors are participating. They've opted in to receive the dresses from this event. We do ask them to relax their requirements. That's why they have to opt in to take our dresses. Yeah, but there are lots of places to donate to, including me. And I do a live on YouTube every Sunday at 2 during the month of September, where I open boxes of dresses and share them with everyone.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, they're so cute. They're so stinking cute.
Well, Mari, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to talk to you and learn about Project Dress a Girl. And I hope that you reach your goal this year and surpass it. So we'll
Oh my
hope for
gosh.
maybe 10,000 dresses instead of 7,000.
Could you imagine? That would be amazing. Thank
It
you.
would be amazing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed my visit with Mari, and I hope that you will consider, if not for this year, maybe in the coming year, to make a few dresses to donate to Project Dress a Girl in 2025. I have a lot of fabric in my stash that I think will make some darling dresses, and I'm going to try to make at least a couple dresses to donate this year and more for next year. I will have all of the links for this episode on the podcast website, which is at www.thestraightstitchpodcast.com. You can also get more information on Mari's website at inspiredleatherco.com. I love to get feedback. You can use the links at the beginning of the episode description on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That goes to Buzzsprout, which is where I host my podcast. And I can't respond directly to those. If you would like a response, email me at janet@janetzabo.com and I will get back to you. www.janetzabo.com is my website, and there are links to my Big Sky Knitting Designs website where I sell my knitting patterns and books, as well as a link to my blog where I write about things that are happening here in Montana. So you can see pictures of my sewing machines and my sewing projects. In the summer, I post a lot of pictures of our animals, our pigs and our chickens, and my big garden. Canning season will last for about another month, and then it will be sewing time. So until our next episode, I hope you have a great week and that you get to go sew something.